I'm feeling like 2 a.m. summer night. I don't care now, hands on the wheel, driving drunk, just doing my thing, rolling in the Midwest side, and now I'm living my life, giving them drinks. People tell me slow my roll, and I'm screaming out, fuck that. I'm gonna do just what I want. I'm looking ahead, no turning back. 'Cause if I fall, if I die, no, I lived it through the fullest. If I fall, if I die, no, I lived in this turbulence. I'm on the pursuit of happiness, and I know everything that shines ain't always gold, hey. But I'll be fine once I get ahead. I'll be good. I'm on the pursuit of happiness, and I know everything that shines ain't always gold. But I'll be fine once I get it. I'll be good. I used to imagine that every teacher I had growing up kept in close contact with each other, just sharing ideas and collaborating in creative processes of developing new ways to try and discipline me. A group effort to control the fat, white-skinned Filipino in the classroom who just refuses to do his work and follow directions. A collective coalition of educators fused simply around the idea of oppressing Brian and assimilating Brian into the white suburban cultural participant that this one nation under God determined he should be. My only strategy for fighting back was a reliance on my own resilience. Eventually, I hoped they would just give up on me. I waited them out until I was 19 years old and I dropped out of high school. Perhaps a lot of this was the effect of mere paranoid delusions induced by doctor-prescribed amphetamines for a lack of overall stability and developmental assets, but would it be too much of a stretch for me to observe certain structural conditions which I feel directly contributed to the hostile environment that I experienced when I went to school every morning? The system that drugged me and tortured me to the point where I would desire my own self-destruction exists as the final convulsions of a eugenically constructed colonial strategy to rob me of my heritage, my history, and my identity in order to transplant the vital organs of white existence into my being so I may integrate myself into a society formulated upon the servitude and destruction of non-white existence. They called me at risk. On paper, it meant that my success at school was at risk so much that it required ongoing interventions to ensure that by the time I got out of school, it would not be an impossibility for me to positively contribute economically and socially to a society that was never fit for my presence to begin with. This was life at risk. This was life as a special education student. For me, growing up through grade school, this was the fear that this would be the only life that I knew and the only thing that I would have to talk about from a prison cell. Back in elementary school, I never really took into consideration the baggage that the title at risk held until I really sat down and thought about it here in college. What at risk really meant was that Brian has white skin but does not behave like or get along with all the other white kids. They told me that these hoops that I had to jump through were so I could survive in the real world, but in truth it was so that this so-called real world may possess and contain me. All this made me just want to give up on the world, and they needed to contain me because I was a monster in the classroom, and my teacher's fears taught the other kids to fear me too. I was a monster so great and terrible that my presence warranted the testing of new, more advanced and innovative disciplinary techniques, all for the great quest to find the best way to tame their developmentally disabled test subject. In the 5th grade, they did this shit called vacation. What vacation was it involved me sitting in the back corner of her classroom where I had a where I had a teacher taped box around my desk where I could not interact and talk to the kids in the classroom. I could not answer the teacher's questions when she was giving instructions. I couldn't even ask questions because just speaking got me kicked out of the classroom for 2 whole weeks. My role was to sit back and do nothing but watch the whole classroom and the whole community engage without me. My special education teachers were taught that when I misbehaved, they needed strategies for intervention. These strategies included and are certainly not limited to telling me to leave the classroom, calling someone to escort me out of the classroom, calling the police to escort me out of the classroom, placing me in an isolation room, punishing me with physical exercise, and refusing to feed me until I finished my assignments for the day. These intervention strategies are still direct contributors to the untrusting person that I am today, and these traumas still contribute to my powerlessness, afraid to go to school in mornings. Because like bullies, these teachers have me telling my grandma that I could not go to school today because I was sick, and I was so sick and tired. I was sick. I was so sick and tired of all of this bullshit. And to be honest with you, I'm still sick and tired of all this school. But to be honest with you again, I could not remain a high school dropout for too long because my grandma was not about to have me just lay in the bed for the rest of my life and do nothing. My unknowability meant that I was presumed to be violent. My awkward appearance, shaped by a belly filled to the brim with meat and grease from the morning's tacos and Snickers bars, paid with my mama's food stamps, was a waistline stretched to maximum capacity that could only be taken as a threat. And so every time there was a problem, it never mattered what the other kid did to me because the teacher could always look at me first. It did not matter what that white girl stole from me because the awkward and ethnically ambiguous boy yelling, "Fuck that," was always already in the wrong because my mere existence and the way that I spoke was always that which made the white kids and the white teacher feel too uncomfortable. I had to deal with parents complaining about my misbehavior on walks home from school, teachers calling me a thug because my shorts were always a little bit too big on me so they sagged, with brown grandparents who raised me so that they could one day be accused of kidnapping at an airport and child abuse by my school just because I learned what little bit I know about discipline from the belt. What was at risk here was every single aspect of myself that I could have possibly found beautiful. At risk was the possibility for me to see my existence as unique because uniqueness and special to all of them were just soft terms to describe the fact that I don't fit in with everyone else. What was at risk was my ability to ever proudly call myself Filipino because kids could call my sack lunch disgusting and a teacher would gladly throw it out for me. What's at risk was the wisdom shared by my Mexican elders whom I called Nana and Grumpy because a GED and a third grade education meant nothing to the teacher who would punish me for not taking notes in class. Never mind the fact that these notes could never convey my uncomfortability in a classroom environment that I never felt safe in. So flash forward to the first day I walked into room 231 at Miller South High School where I took my first debate class. It didn't take long for me to figure out that this would be the most challenging thing I've ever done in my adolescent life. I never found myself contained to a rubric in debate class when the only thing that I had was my experience to contradict the privilege in the room. I was just way too raw to give into the standards and limitations encouraged by what experts say debate is and ought to be. I thought that debate was everything I needed when I so desperately needed to escape the confines of my educational holding facility. It was like momentary freedom every time I entered that sweaty day classroom, concealed and hidden from the rest of the school that I did not feel safe in, stocked with the fruits of forbidden knowledge not taught in the classroom, and people whom I could share my experiences with had me really excited to attend my first ever debate tournament in high school. The first ever debate round I was in was a debate about whether or not the way I presented myself and my arguments that I provided even belonged in the activity, that sharing and my experience and ideas meant that I had somehow tainted this holy sanctuary debate, that the rich white kids from the county up the road had no time or even ability to even engage in what I got to say. They tell me that they can't research this stuff. They still tell me they can't research this stuff. And that's fair enough because people much more qualified than them have tried and failed in the same regard. School has become something I can never escape because of all these strategies utilized against my position, against my identity, against my soul, and my very being. It locked me in. So my participation is not just about changing the system from the inside. My participation damn sure until pulled up on my bootstrap story for all my teachers to take credit for. My presence in education and debate is what they call insubordination. My presence here is to defy all the curriculum and rip up the syllabi that kept me contained in isolation rooms so that this knowledge and these experiences can finally inform us about what is. Never will I be confined to a worksheet, but instead I'll hold myself to the experiential moment in which the interaction between the people in this classroom matter, instead of being worried about making sure that we spend enough time working through a no curriculum about the implications of subjects that can never truly affect the conditions in which this colonization is made possible. Thus, this debate will not be a continuation of the standardized lessons that I got in that suburban community that I was never meant to exist in. This is where the classroom has been transformed to a space where the affect of our performance and experience can change the situations of the classroom. Cross-X.
Why is the ballot necessary for any of the claims you made?
Why is the ballot necessary? Okay, so like the claims about how I really like debate as an activity, right? I like to win in debate, so the ballots are very necessary in that, especially at the NDT. A 3-0 would be
The only reason is to have a 3-0 for you because you like debates.
Well, what else is the reason for getting a ballot other than trying to win a debate?
True, but like what metric would the judges evaluate this debate upon?
What metric would the judges evaluate this debate upon? Whoever did the better debating.
And how would they determine that?
How would they determine that? First of all, there's a debate about the overarching assumptions of educational models in debate. There's a debate about the overarching assumptions of educational models that occur in these classrooms, which we were never guaranteed access to begin with.
So how does the YC?
I'm not even done in describing the metric for how we should determine this debate. I think that it should be a question of competing methodologies in terms of educational models, more specifically through political activities like this. But also, our indication is that there is no predetermined role for the judges other than the fact that they come in here to decide the round for themselves.
All right, fair enough. So what part of the 1AC performance changed the educational structures that exist in every other classroom?
That's right, but our argument is about this classroom, right? When we walk into this space, it has automatically been transformed just by our presence within it. This is a classroom that I was never guaranteed access to, right? I got a GED.
The university space constantly accepts criticisms as part of its model for how.
That's right, but I ain't over here listening to my criticism. We got Joe Schatz recording my criticism.
True, but the university space as like a totality
As a totality.
allows criticism.
See, this concept of the university space as a totality is not something I understand, because I ain't never been to no university. You know what I'm saying? This is the closest thing I got to being in a university right now.
The one I see,
Is physically sitting my fat ass down right here in this chair.
I understand. The one I see criticizes the educational space.
Right, I can't go to NYU.
What part? I understand. But what part of the one I see changes those educational spaces? What part of voting for the affirmative would alter those educational?
See, you're talking about these hypothetical educational spaces that happen at some point in time in the future or some point in time in the past. We're talking about this educational space specifically. And yes, I'm talking about the physical classroom that exists right here. These chairs, these walls, these windows, the ceiling, these people.
And I'm still, going back to my very first question, I'm still unsure of why you need those three people's validation for your form.
It's not about validation, it's a question of who did the better debating. We presented arguments about the way that classroom structures orient themselves. We provided a challenge to those structures through our affective performance, and thus, we deserve a ballot because thus far, you have yet to get up here and engage the app.
I'm sure we haven't given that one to see yet.
Exactly.
Obviously. All right. Well, we'll get next.